Judge Andrew Napolitano on that, what do you think?
Well, you know, the congressman is free to make that judgment that here's what happened and I don't think it's impeachable. And other people are free to say here's what happened and it is impeachable. But it seems clear that the president pushed an agenda which had the Ukrainians trying to do something against the president's political opponent. And while he pushed that agenda, he held up $391 million in aid. The congressman is free to say that that's not impeachable, and the Democrats are free to say it is impeachable.
Right?
It's not black and white. In my view, it is clearly impeachable because it involves two potential crimes. The crime of bribery, which Congressman Buck just mentioned, which is defined as the failure to do an official act, release the $391 million until a favor comes your way. Announce, not conduct an investigation, announce the existence of an investigation of Joe Biden. The other crime is asking for campaign aid from a foreign national. That is a crime in and of itself, just asking. They're free to say that that's not an impeachable offense, but they're not free to say it didn't happen because the evidence that it happened is overwhelming.
Well, some of them did take the leap that even if it did happen, it isn't impeachable. So I'm not the lawyer here. I am confused. I am curious what you make of the fact the president might want to skip out on this Judiciary Committee opening hearing and maybe others to follow because it's essentially a kangaroo court. They're not fair. It's a cabal against him. What do you think?
Well, the rules about which the president is complaining were written by a Republican House of Representatives in 2015. So I think the president would be very unwise not to send lawyers there. I shouldn't go himself. That would be unseemly for him to sit there while people are testifying against him or while legal scholars are arguing over what is and what is not.
Republicans have told me, Judge, for what it's worth, that these are not the exact same rules, that the Democrats are taking liberties. Republicans themselves did not, you know, back 20 years ago.
The rules in 2015 allow the majority to take those liberties. So the Democrats are not doing anything that the Democrats didn't do to Nixon or the Republicans didn't do to Bill Clinton. But I think he makes a mistake when he refuses to participate. It is a valid vote by the House of Representatives that authorized this. It is a valid hearing that Congressman Schiff presided. You may not like Schiff personally. You may not like the rulings he made, but he has the authority to make those rulings.
Well, what will the difference be between Schiff and now Jerry Nadler running the Judiciary Committee?
I don't know the answer to that, except it appears as though the witnesses who will testify before Congressman Nadler's Judiciary Committee will be legal scholars giving opinions as to whether this set of facts that Schiff sent over constitutes an impeachable offense. But the Republicans, if the president, if he participates, his lawyer would have the right to call somebody who says it's not an impeachable offense. His lawyer would even have the right to call Rick Perry or Mike Pence or Mike Pompeo.
To participate in that, right, to exonerate himself or at least state his case.
He also loses.
People are watching on TV.
He also loses the argument. It's unfair if he doesn't take the opportunity to participate himself.
All right, Lisa Page making some news on the wires right now, the former FBI lawyer, speaking out an article in the Daily Beast saying, among other things, it's also very intimidating because he's still the president of the United States. And when the president accuses you of treason by name, despite the fact that I know there's no fathomable way that I may have committed any crime at all, what she's saying is not fair, not now. I'm not going to keep taking it silently now.
It's a little surreal when the president tweets about you having been there, even if he says things that you know are not true. Now, I can tell you that from personal experience, except my experience is minuscule compared to what she's been through. He's tweeted about her personal behavior, and he's made all kinds of comments about it, and now she wants to say something.
Would you give her advice, having been on the receiving end of an answer?
I would tell her to not to say anything, because she is still a potential witness and even a potential defendant, depending upon what the Inspector General comes out with early next week.
That is very well put, young man. All right.
I like the young man part.
The dutiful lawyer. All right, here we go. Thank you, Judge.